welcome back to the Family Entrepreneur Life live show. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited to introduce my next guest expert on the show. Today, I've got a good friend of ours, Amelia Bowler. She's a board certified behavioral analyst. Wow, that did not sound right coming out. Behavioral analyst. Thank you for bearing with me there. Who tests all of her tips and strategies with her own young children in her home laboratory. She writes at ameliabehavior.com and expresses her ideas through art on Instagram at Amelia Behavior, which, by the way, her pictures are amazing. So definitely check those out. Amelia, welcome to the show.
Ariana, thanks you so much for having me. I'm super, super excited.
I'm so excited to have you here. Why don't you go ahead and fill in any of the gaps in there? Let us know your family dynamic and, kind of how you got started on this journey.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, I've always been a really natural teacher and also a bit of an oddball. So those themes kind of continue throughout my life. And now I'm kind of a teacher of oddball, so that's working out really, really well. At first I was just kind of a classroom teacher, and that was cool, but I really wanted to get specialized. So I started learning more about different kinds of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these kinds of thinking, like you could class them as disability, but in other ways they're just kind of not, they just don't fit in with the typical expectations.
Okay.
When I say disabilities, people maybe assume that means that something is lesser than, but maybe just for the sake of simplicity, when I talk about disability, such as autism or ADHD, that just means that these people are thinking differently and they're not fitting into typical situations. So
I like that.
yeah, I found that behavior analysis was an amazing way to break down skills into little pieces and work with motivation. And that I started getting really cool results. And looking back, I kind of saw, oh yeah, I was an oddball and this would have worked with me a long time ago. So now I have a family. I have 2 kids. They're totally weird in their own wonderful ways. I'm married to a guy who's also we just have our own intense forms of weirdness. So I find that I get to use my behavior analytic skills a lot at home, just trying to figure out how we all fit together and staying on the same page.
I love that.
Yeah, that was the big story.
Oh, that's so cool. And so you are here today, and I got to tell you, we've got a lot of parents that are excited. Parent entrepreneurs are excited about this topic we're talking about today, which is helping kids learn to be more independent.
I did that mentally as well when you brought up that topic, because it's something I've definitely written about this on the blog, because I think every parent comes across this. That's our whole job is over the child's lifetime, is how to develop that independence. But when you do it too slow or you do it too fast, you get resistance and we run into trouble. Where should we start?
I think maybe starting with the young age group first. I know a lot of us have younger kids, and that's a big struggle. Being a parent who works from home, how do you kind of juggle if your child is home with you while you're working, helping to teach them those foundational concepts of starting to be more independent?
Oh my goodness. Okay,
That's
let's take one. This. Yeah, I think is just making sure that your environment is set up. Before we worry about your skills or the child's skills, look around your home and look for ways that you can help your child to become more independent, just by making it a little bit easier. So for instance, we have this set up in our kitchen where the drawer that has the cutlery was way on the other side of the room from the table. So my child would say, oh, I need a fork. And then, of course, who's going to get up to get the fork? We could have a 5-minute conversation about it, but normally mom and dad would just like to eat their meal, and so we'd run up and get the stuff for the kids.
It's like you're talking to me right now, by the way. Have you been in our kitchen?
Well, I actually dragged one of our we had a big bookshelf in the living room for reading stories, I dragged it into and fit it into one wall of the dining room.
Mm.
So now there are plastic cups that can't be dropped. There is like our whole cutlery tray sits right beside, and also there is a basket full of wipes so that the kid, if something gets spilled, right? It's not just a whole disaster where you're leaping across counters. Like, we're setting up our environment so that it's very easy for the kids to get stuff for themselves, and that helps them to get into the habit. I hope that makes sense.
I love that suggestion. I love it. I mean, we have like little ways that we've done that, but I guess I've
Mm-hmm.
never looked at it from the big picture and doing it in like every room. And
Mm-hmm.
the kitchen, we don't have like any of their bowls or anything for them to reach. All we have is the silverware that they can reach. And then they can reach certain
Mm-hmm.
things in the fridge. But having that like I love that little shelf area of bowls and plates because we always have snacks and they can grab the snacks out of the
Mm-hmm.
pantry, but then they always need a bowl to put them in. And so, of course, who has to reach for the bowls? So
Yeah.
that is a great
Yeah.
idea. I'm gonna be like, Tom, we need to implement this immediately.
Yes.
And the
Goal
wipes
right out
and
of
the
the
paper
gate. Okay.
towels, like having all of that right down there is perfect. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm really glad about that. Okay. Next, let's talk about playing independently. That's like
Mm,
the holy grail, right? When you're
yes,
trying to get
that is
something
the
done.
holy grail.
The first thing I would recommend in this situation would be take advantage of minimalism. Like, it
Mm.
seems counterintuitive. You think, you got a whole room full of toys. Why aren't you? This is the voice I use when I talk to my kids. Why aren't you playing with anything you got? And I've literally heard from my children, I don't have anything to play with. And I stood there and counted like 23 items. And then this is what I did, because I'm a human being. I put them all away. Like, the children
Mm.
went to bed, and when they woke up in the morning, all those things were gone, and they didn't notice. Which just teaches you that when things are sort of in plain view all the time, they lose their kind of tantalizing value,
Yeah.
and the kids aren't necessarily drawn to those things. So what I did instead was I filled a few closets full of toy bins,
Hmm.
and we take one or two things down at a time. So when a child looks around, they don't get overwhelmed immediately, like, oh, what should I do? I don't know. I'm going to go ask mom. So they do one of two or three things. There's a few toys around that they'll just noodle around with, or they know that there's a
Mm.
closet. They've now figured it out. There's a closet. Can I go and look in the closet? So they go and look at the closet. They haven't seen it for a while. They pull something out, and we sort of keep things moving. Another thing that's really helpful, I don't know if you have this in your home, is some places actually have a toy library where you can just borrow toys
Oh,
and then you give them back.
I think, you
Yeah.
know what? Now
Yeah,
that
it's
you
great.
say that, there's a website
Mm-hmm.
that does that, I believe. And I can't remember, of course, live, and I can't remember the name of it, but I remember it was like a subscription based toy website where
Mm-hmm.
you could do exactly
Yeah.
that. You could borrow or rent out toys, and you paid like a small monthly fee, and you could order, like you had
Mm-hmm.
a wish list. And then when your kid was done playing with it, you could send it back, and then you would get the next toy on your wish list. So that was kind of a cool
That's
concept. We never tested it, but I've always thought about that, like, oh, maybe we should have done that and tried it out. And they have one for
mm-hmm.
Legos too. And that one I know is called
Oh my
Play, which I
gosh.
think is Pley. And you could have like a monthly
Mm-hmm.
subscription for Lego sets. So all of you people who have kids that are like way into Legos, but you don't want to
Oh,
have to buy the sets that then get built and
they
sit
just want to put them
around.
together and then
Exactly.
they
So you
never want
could
to take them
do
apart
that.
again.
Yeah. And
Oh,
we did.
that's
We trialed
amazing.
that one, and that one was pretty cool. Our daughter keeps asking, like, when are we going to
Yeah.
do that Lego thing again where we get brand new Legos every time? I was like, okay, Christmas is coming. Ideas.
Yeah, for sure. So sometimes it's not a lack of creativity, it's just a difficulty decision making and a lack of novelty. So you can kind of harness that to capture your child's attention a little bit more. Let's see. I think I thought of one more thing. Two more things maybe.
Two more
Um,
things.
this, yeah, we can also sort of take advantage of something that's in the environment by using a visual to help the
Mm,
kids decide what to do. So, for example, this really happened in my house this weekend. My children kind of, I have two boys, and they are very boisterous. They're 3 and 5 years old right now, and they had found this game together that they really liked. Basically, it just involves colliding. Like like, oh, I'm Darth Maul, oh, I'm Darth Vader. Okay, but like that's the extent of the storytelling. Oh, that's a barrel. Let's just pound each other.
Huh, that sounds familiar.
For them, oh, okay. I'm sorry to hear that. It was great for a little while. Like they were really cooperative. Like you could see them kind of like negotiating. Like, oh, let's say that you die. No, I don't want to die. You die. And that was good. Some problem solving skills, but it was getting dangerous, you know. And by Saturday morning, somebody had a bloody lip, and I was just like, no fighting. But they didn't know what else to do. They had forgotten everything else that there was to do. So I called a family meeting. And by the way, I did this, I was kind of sneaky. I did this family meeting on our bed, like not a place that we usually have a talk. So we're not filled with clutter. Kids aren't like picking things up. There's nothing there. We're all kind of corralled together in this weird, strange place. Because the idea is I was trying to disrupt an old pattern. So it's good to go to a new place when you're resetting.
I like that.
So I brought my markers and my notebook, and I said, guys, and I like drew some pictures of people fighting. I drew the red circle across. I drew some pictures of our emotions, you know, in different situations. And I said, all right, here's where we solve the problem together. Let's make a list of all the fun things that we know how to do. We take turns. We went around, everybody put down their ideas, and then we put that idea on the wall. So when somebody was sort of at a loss or was tempted to just do something they weren't supposed to do, go and look at the list. Now, this isn't going to work forever, but it is nice to sort of refresh some of those old ideas. So the kids had forgotten that they love to play hide and seek.
Yeah.
And they'd never built a fort before. But sometimes, you know, you suggest it and the kids are like, no, we don't want to do that. But if it stays on the wall, then they have a chance to kind of revisit that idea a few times. And my child will now actually like get his marker and go and like circle the thing that he wants to do before we go and do it.
I'm going to do this.
Yeah. So visuals are sometimes really helpful because then you're not doing the reminding. You're not like, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? You've already done the brainstorming with them, and they have helped you. And there it is. It's on the wall. Go look at the list.
I like that too, just for it's combining the overwhelm of all of the stuff that they have and they forget about. And then also the imagination of like, what are some things we could play? And you're kind of like lumping that together with like, hey, if you come up to me and you say, I don't know what to play, go to the sheet and say, you know, do I want to do something that we already have, or do I want to maybe make up a new game or play a game that we haven't played in a while? Because we have, our daughter is very much into creative play, and she very often will make up her own games or make up her own little story play. But it's like she forgets to do that sometimes until she finds the toys that make that imagination come back up. So it's like anytime we have a playroom, we have a dedicated playroom now. We bunked the kids together so that we could have less toy clutter all over the house. And so everything now sits in the playroom, which has been amazing. But a lot of times if they don't go in there, I get a lot of, well, I just want to watch YouTube videos, or I don't know what to do right now. I feel like I don't know what to play. And you get the, well, you've got all those toys in the playroom. So now instead of saying that, I've been doing let's go in the playroom together and see what we can maybe find. Because she doesn't actually look in there. Like, she doesn't go around and poke into all the little buckets in the shelves and all the boxes to say like, oh, maybe I should look in here and see if there's something to play with. It's more the act of, do you remember you have this toy and do you still want to play with it? Because otherwise this is on mommy's list for the Christmas purge. Before we go through that holiday season, we give away lots of toys that we don't play with anymore. So that's I love that concept of putting the ideas right on the wall for them to see, because she's at that age where she is more independent. She's 5, but she still has those tendencies to say, I am bored, or I don't know what to play. So I want to sit in front of the TV and watch YouTube videos. And I'm like, no, let's not. Let's do something else.
Yeah. The screen, like, I get it. I get that, it's a very rewarding, easy thing. I get that the kids are asking for it. And I find that we've had to sort of manage that by letting them know exactly when the TV is going to be available. Because if they're not sure, then it's always a good idea to ask about it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what if I go, like, if they're really kind of at loose ends, like, well, what if I go and play Lego for 10 minutes, then can I watch TV? Like, I get a lot of bargaining, I get a lot of asking. So if there's some really, like, oh, it's Saturday, you can watch it for this many minutes, or we only watch it before dinner, we never watch it after dinner, like, really firm,
Yep.
this is happening, this is not happening, that helps a lot.
I do. Yeah, I do
The
like
left.
that because I find that they will sit and watch whenever, unless we specifically say, okay, the TV is off and let's go find a game to play or let's find some toys to play with. And it's honestly, it's hard to remember sometimes because I feel like we're lucky in the fact that our kids entertain themselves very well with all of the stuff that we have. So it's almost like they're very good at self-regulating their TV time. So it's almost like I take that for granted sometimes. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I'm sitting there like, oh my God, I think the TV's been on for 2 hours. Like, okay, we got to turn it off. We got to turn it off. So yeah, I like that, having dedicated times. And also I think that would help teach the kids, reading time and remembering the routines and the schedules too, because she is getting to that point where she'll ask you what time it is. So now we could say, like, you can watch videos from this time to this time, and she can go to the clock and actually say, oh, it's 7:00. I get to watch videos for 30 minutes or whatever that is. So I like that. I think we might have to implement that. She may not like that very much, but oh, and speaking of negotiations, we mentioned negotiations. We actually had a question from Heather Clark, and I'm going to read it. How do you not lose your shit when the kid negotiates?
Don't lose your, celebrate the fact that your child is negotiating. That's a life skill.
I think what she means is negotiates for everything. How do you deal with it when there is it's almost like a constant negotiation feed? Because our daughter is the same way now that she's 5. It's like you can't do or say anything without the negotiations taking place. So is there a response that we can go into so that we can easily get through to the other side?
I want to say no, because
I was afraid of that.
Yeah, there's sort of two things happening here. One of them, like, the child is using this amazing skill. That's really great. But probably the reason they're using this skill is because they're having a hard time taking no for an answer. So unfortunately, when they're in that moment and they're missing that skill, you can be like, just say no. We're done. And they're like, but and they're still pushing. Like the other day, my son really wanted to go to his friend Andrew's house, and we don't have Andrew's phone number. And so I got this text message from my phone because I had sent him an email. Maybe he'll reply to that. He hadn't replied, and I was hearing the negotiations by a text message. I got one like, oh, well, he's up the stakes now. Now he wants to go to his friend's house by limousine. You're going the wrong way. They're not very good at negotiating right now, but they're really trying. Okay. So here's what we did. It's called an antecedent intervention, which means it happens before you're expecting the difficult behavior to happen.
Okay.
This is a good one. Accepting no for an answer. When you've got this really tough skill and you are not able to teach it in the moment because the stakes are too high and the kids are hanging on for dear life and you're losing it. Don't teach the skill in that moment. It's not going to work. Instead, find a moment where you guys are kind of relaxed, think it through, and look at it from their point of view. So you start the conversation like this. Remember the other day when you really wanted a slice of cheese before dinner and I said no, and you kept saying yes, and then you said no, and then I shouted and you felt really sad. Remember that? So you kind of, instead of being like, I'm going to teach you how to respond correctly, it's like, oh, remember that tough time for you? Like, I've got an idea for this. And if you want, you can go through and ask them for ideas. But you might not like the answer. This is an easier way to do it. Say, I have an idea. I'm going to show you, okay? I'll be you. Watch me. Mom, can I have a piece of cheese? You say no. Okay? You be the mom, Ariana. Ready?
Okay.
Yes. Mom, can I have a piece of cheese?
No, you can't. It's almost dinner time.
Okay. Okay. So you show them what to do. You actually like switch places with them and you play their part. And then you let them know what the upside is. Like they didn't want to do it because it didn't even occur to them to say okay before because the only possible way through that situation is to get the cheese.
Okay.
But what you're doing is you're sort of like, oh, you're using like a casual, fun little role play situation. And they think it's hilarious when you pretend to be them. And they love being the parent and having all the answers. And then they get to figure out, they get to experience in play what happens when they do that other thing you were trying to get them to do. So now what happens? Like if my mom, if you say, okay, what's going to happen? And the kid thinks about it, like, you will be glad I will get it later. Like you can talk through the potential upside when the stakes aren't so high. I hope I've made that.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot more sense. And I don't know why I didn't think of that with the negotiating piece, because that's sort of what we do with any other times that we have behaviors that we don't really, we don't want to enforce. Instead of trying to teach it in the moment, because she's just angry and will cry and scream like she is being murdered when we get into that, like, you have to sit in timeout. No, I want my bun buns and I don't want to sit in timeout. She just like, there is no reasoning whatsoever. Like she just is in,
I'll say it loud.
Yeah, she doesn't hear you. She's in 100% emotion mode. So with that, because we know that that's how she reacts to things, we will wait until she's calmed down later. And then we talk about, like, do you understand why mommy and daddy were so upset with you when you did that thing? Do you know why what you did was so upsetting for us? Why do you think we were so mad? And kind of just walking through some of those things. And then talking about the emotions and the appropriate responses sometimes, because she tends to be very, she's definitely a little bit more sensitive, and the emotions, we go from normal to like heightened in a crazy amount of time. And so we know that now. So it's kind of like, okay, we just grin and bear it while it's happening. We do the normal routine of you sit here for a couple minutes, calm yourself down, and then we go on later and talk about it when we've calmed down and we can have, a practical discussion about things. But, of course, we've got a 2-year-old who's now watching his 5-year-old sister, and he's starting to repeat some of those things too. So we're definitely trying to work with her more so that some of those behaviors aren't repeated, because then you can't reason with a 2-year-old at all. So
no. Yeah. And I think it's smart to use reasoning with a 5-year-old. And I think what I'm encouraging you to add to that is the play. Because what you get to do with the play is you get to give them the actual experience of being in that, like picturing themselves. You could talk about a situation. It's not the same as kind of doing it. So one like training process that I really like, I think there's 4 steps. I'm going to give you my fingers. There we go. So if you're doing a new job, let's say, I'm just going to take a job that I did once. I was like I sold popcorn at the movie theater. If somebody had just walked up to me and said, like, all right, Amelia, here's how you sell popcorn. You take the money and then you give them the change and then you give them the popcorn and you do all these things. If they had just explained it to me and then said, okay, go do it, would I have been a great employee? No, not at all. We don't expect people to learn that way. We don't expect adults to learn that way, but we sometimes expect children to learn that way. We're just like, I'm telling you now, so just do it. But what we can do instead is we can take them through a training process. We can say, let me show you what it looks like to do that. Okay? You be the mom. I'm the kid. Let me show you. And then they get to watch it. And then you switch roles and they get to play through the situation. And you can even like try out different scenarios. What if I said this? And what if you did this? And so you're planning together and you're problem solving together. It's a little bit more like it's a different kind of learning than just the logic.
And I like that.
It's more two-way, which I like too.
Yeah, and I think she would enjoy that as well, because she is definitely she understands a lot for her age, and I think she would definitely pick up on that very quickly. So definitely going to be putting that action into play for sure. I'm sure Tom
Oh,
is
fun.
probably watching upstairs. He's like, yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Man, did we cover all of that?
I think we covered all of
Great.
that. Yeah. I have one last question that I want to ask, just because I know we have a lot of people with older kids as well, is
Mhm.
what's the best? I mean, obviously if you set the foundations, that's the best part. But if you are in this now, like if you're just starting your business and you've got older kids who maybe don't understand quite so much, how do you get that independence piece for
Mm.
that age group to
Mhm.
really work with you and your family dynamic and building your business?
I haven't experienced that personally, but I do work with a lot of teenagers and kids with disabilities. And I guess there's so many like just little facets to that. In terms of overall independence, like I need you to get your lunch together, because mommy's on a call, that kind of thing. Um, Whatever we can do to make it easier just to start with. Like if a child isn't doing something, it might not be because they don't want to enough. Like you could try rewards and stuff like that. If that doesn't work, that tells you it's kind of a little bit too hard for them. They might be able to do it some of the way, some of the time. They haven't mastered that skill yet. So whatever
Mm,
you can do to make it a little bit easier. So for example, you want them to make a sandwich, lay out the ingredients in the morning so they can just go through. Or you want them to get dressed in the morning or help them like pick out their clothes. You know what I mean? Lowering the bar a little bit just to ease them into that. And then they get the hang of it. And hopefully you can start fading yourself out. But
oh, I like that. Yeah,
yeah,
that
that's what.
eases people into a little bit, I think.
Yeah, and visuals can also be really helpful too. Like if you find that you're always the one going like, "Don't forget you put your homework in your backpack." That's how parents talk, right? Sorry.
Some of us, yes.
it's obviously just me. Yeah, like there are things that you can do to just help them be more independent with visuals. I've seen adorable like little keychains on backpacks, like
Oh
the
yeah,
5 or 6
that's so
things you
cool.
need to bring. Like you go to get your backpack, they're like ding 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 ding. Yeah, I got all my stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
and I feel
So
like in the age
visuals I
of
think are
technology
usually good.
too, we could probably take
Yeah.
advantage of that with kids that have cell phones and having like a reminder app or a to-do list app so
Mm-hmm.
that you have those like things that ding on their phone like don't forget your lunch and you have that reminder for them every morning.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you have a linked, obviously we have linked calendars for us and for our kids even though they're young,
Mm-hmm.
but as you get
Yeah.
older, if you've got linked family calendars and you can like shoot somebody a reminder and put it right on their calendar so that while they're at school, they remember, like, oh, hey, you're taking the late bus because you have something after school or whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
I think that
Yeah.
helps add more to it. Like you can do so many more
Mm-hmm.
things now with the little niceties that technology gives us.
Yeah. And just one more thing with the older kids, like it's good to involve them in the process and ask them, like, okay, I noticed that it was hard for you to bring your mittens home from school. Tell me more about that. Get more information from your kids, involve them in the problem solving process instead of just making it a unilateral solution. Like you're a grown up and you have a lot of information, a lot of experience, but they have their own strengths and they may have their own perspective. So it's really good to hear that before you start problem solving for them.
Ah, yeah, I like that. Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh, we could probably talk for hours.
Yeah, for
all of
sure.
the all of the gold nuggets you've shared today. I know there's going to be people raving about it as they watch the replay. Last thing before we jump off, what is one biggest lesson learned or piece of advice you have for everyone watching that you've encountered on your journey to becoming an entrepreneur?
I was with you right up until you said entrepreneur. One
Uh-oh.
thing, a lesson learned about being an entrepreneur. Um, Gosh, I think it's very true that we are often not raised to make all these decisions, and we're raised to kind of expect the path to be laid out for us. Um, so I think the best thing we can do as parents is give our kids more of those experiences. Like, you want to do something big? Awesome! Let's plan it together. Let's not wait for someone else to come along with a to-do list. Let's map this together. Because that's often the biggest challenge for us, right? As entrepreneurs, is it's all uncharted territory. But the nice thing is that our kids get to watch us explore all that and hopefully go on their own adventures when they get older.
Yes, yes, I love that. Oh my gosh. So good, so good. So, Amelia, I know we're probably going to have people who want to reach out to you or jump on and just read more about some of the stuff we talked about today on your blog. So, where is the best place for people to find you?
Okay, so I write more or less every week at ameliabehavior.com. It's behavior spelled the Canadian way. There's an extra U. It's a bonus. I put the U back in behavior. I just realized.
Oh, I love it. That's perfect. You back in behavior.
Yeah, now I don't have to change the spelling. Okay. If you want to follow me on Facebook, I have a parenting page. It's called Creative Connected Parenting. It's just very friendly and low key, and I give you lots of articles and ideas. And if you need like reminders of whatever's on the blog, that's there. I would so love for you to follow me on Instagram because I paint pretty pictures. That's sort of one of my old skills that I just recycled and I add in there for fun. That's at ameliabehavior.com. Yeah, you should be able to catch up with me there.
I love it. I watch all your paintings. I'm always like, because they're just so beautiful. But then I also love the fact that you bring it back and you talk about the behavioral stuff and you tell fun stories that are very, I don't know, I think it just makes it easier to, as parents, to think about some of that stuff when you put it out there like that. It's not just like, oh, hey, you parent, you're not doing a great job and you should be doing this instead. It's, oh, have you thought about this? Here's a cute little story with a little visual of, a parent and a child going through this scenario. And it just makes it a little bit more, I don't know, it just makes it easier for me to like take that in and think about how I can take that and apply that to our family and to our kids. So, and they're just pretty pictures. And I love animals and you paint lots of animals. So it's a win-win for me.
Thank you. I think I'm blushing a little bit. That's nice.
All right. Well, it has been a joy to have you on, Amelia. Thank you so much for coming and just sharing some amazing, amazing tips. I know people are just going to get so much out of watching this show. And I apologize if there were any kind of issues for anyone watching with the sound or the video. We did have some connectivity issues at the very beginning, but hopefully you heard us loud and clear. And we will post up the links to Amelia's blog and her Instagram so that you guys can go and check her out over there. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and thank you guys all for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.